Marlon Small's body was left in ribbons after he had been bladed in a targeted incident in a commotion that lasted less than 45 seconds. His Chapeltown gangster Damien Dhers had sat in the driver's seat of a distinctive VW Golf, engine idle as he counted down the minutes and seconds until he would encounter his sworn enemy, his rival, Marlon Small. Now the two guys were not friends despite the fact that they were from the same area, being the Chapeltown area of Leeds. Now his pals Kieran and Marcus Clarke, who were also from Chapeltown too, had massaged Damien's ego, giving the 34-year-old the confidence to K his rival. Now when Marlon Small was spotted exiting the lounge, bar and grill, it was alleged that Damien had pressed down an acceleration pedal and then drove forward at speed before approaching Marlon. Now Marlon had walked into the middle of the street as the car screeched to a stop and the two men spoke. It was tense, dire and strained, with both men being animated. Marlon by himself, vulnerable and alone, and Damien part of a three-man gang. That adrenaline was running high. So hasty and eager to confront Marlon Small, the two men exchanged no more than 10 words to each other before Damien suddenly reached out to the driver's side window of his VW Golf, his dominant hand gripped tightly round a large blade handle, and then without provocation or warning, Damien launched his whole body forward and bladed Marlon, target area being the chest. The sheer force of that jab had meant that the serrated edge had not only made contact with Marlon's heart, but it also tore it open. The injury was catastrophic. With a cold laugh, it was then says that Damien allegedly then drove away, while Marlon was left floundering outside the lounge and grill on Merrion Street on November 1st, 2014. This happened just before 1:15 p.m. and then Marlon made his way back onto the pavement, staggering and uneasy. Unable to stay on his feet any longer, the 31-year-old then collapsed, surrounded by partygoers trying to save his life. Now, CCTV operators first alerted the police and the ambulance service after they spotted a small group around Marlon Small, and Marlon was unmoving. And then over 3 dozen calls were placed to 999 in a span of 5 minutes. Both police and ambulance staff, including rapid response team and trauma doctors, had raced to the scene. Blue lights. At this point, Marlon was fleeting in and out of consciousness. He was taken to hospital as an emergency, but there was nothing that doctors could do to save the 31-year-old's life, and tragically, he was soon pronounced dead upon arrival. This was now an M investigation. Now, Marlon Small and Damien Dhers were known to each other. The two men had held grudges against each other since the mid-2000s, and there were a ton of instances where these guys came to blows, including the two men scrapping outside the club previously. Now, they fell out over an issue allegedly concerning a bike. However, police believed that there was more to it because both men were known to police and criminals and had both been to jail previously. As the two men, whom were both from Chapeltown, reached adulthood and then got involved in crime, there was competition as to who was the real gangster and who was the cardboard gangster. Now, while Marlon had first appeared on police radar for being a serious criminal after he had been linked to different gangs between London and Manchester that had plotted to buy and sell pistols. On one occasion, Greater Manchester Police Serious Crime Unit had used a combination of mobile phone data and signal, and also CCTV, witness statements, and also surveillance to track the sale of an unused anonymous revolver. Undercover police had followed Jonathan Martins and Sia Sundal, who were both from London, as they made their way to an address in Leeds that belonged to Marlon, after a meeting was set up with the organised gangsters. And then just 2 months later, Yorkshire Police had put surveillance officers on Marlon Small, whom had been recorded driving from an address in Huddersfield and then driving to Manchester in order to procure a Remington. Now, the two cars went to Stretford, where Remy Parker, who was 18 years old, handed over a white plastic bag that contained a Rec 9mm silencer, night sights, and also magazines loaded. The cars were then stopped on an A56 where the GUNs were found in the boot of a car belonging to Marlon Small, and that car was a Nissan. Now, Marlon Small was jailed for 9.5 years after admitting conspiracy to possess GUNs with intent to endanger, conspiracy to possess GUNs, conspiracy to possess without a certificate, and driving while disqualified. Now, Damien Dhers, on the other hand, had been in trouble with police. However, his crimes were more to do with selling Class A, both H and white. Now, after the M was committed, Damien Dhers sought comfort in his girlfriend's arms as he changed clothes, cleaned his car, and sought to make arrangements to avoid his arrest. Now, Damien enlisted the help of Kieran, who is from the Hare Hills area, and also Marcus Clarke, who is from the same area as Marlon Small, being Chapeltown too. And of course, the car was disposed of, that distinct VW Golf. Now, Damien's girlfriend, 31-year-old Sherelle Davidson, placed the call to Powell's Carmelo Marzullo, who then picked up Damien and then drove him all the way to Middlesbrough, where the gang hid out for 3 days before the group separated. Now, Damien stayed in hiding, and the police were forced to list the man as a wanted man. For more than 3 weeks he had hid out. Now, Damien eventually handed himself into the police, ready to spin a story that would describe the incident as nothing more than an unfortunate accident between two men whom had a very real dislike towards each other. Now, police had already expected Damien Dhers to turn himself in. It was only a matter of time, so they had already built a plausible reason as to why the M took place. When Damien Dhers was interviewed by police, he let the police know that him and Marlon were considered rivals. Damien explained that he did not like Marlon and regarded Marlon as a plastic gangster who was nothing more than a grass. Damien then alluded to the fact that Marlon Small previously had been acquitted of an M, which did not make sense. Now, in court, Damien Dhers, was also known as Damien Clarke, was told by a judge that he would be jailed for life, with a minimum term set at 24 years. Initially, Damien tried to plead guilty to manslaughter, but that was not accepted by the prosecution, and again, they decided to push for the M charge, and Damien Dhers was found guilty. He was also known as Damien Clarke. Now, in court, the judge says that Damien Dhers had an irrational hatred towards Marlon Small and deliberately set out to end his life, to K him. He wanted it to be public and didn't care who was around. He thought the fact that he was in the driver's seat of the car, where he extended his arm in order to blade his rival, would be enough to conceal his identity. So the false account wasn't believed by the detectives when he did eventually hand himself in much the same way as the jury saw throughout it in court. Again, Damien Dhers, aka Damien Clarke, who is a Chapeltown gangster and had already had previous convictions for some serious crimes, ruined his life and also Marlon Small's family's life for no other reason than wanting to end the life of a rival. Asinine behaviour. And the end result was again a man losing his life, but also Damien Dhers being sentenced to life with a minimum term of 24 years. Does the crime match the sentence? Let me know. Stay safe.